Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to another episode of Nick's Picks. And today, I had to do this. I had to do a review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse because my wife and I, along with a couple of friends, we actually went and watched the video last night, or the movie last night. And I immediately wanted to say something. I immediately was like, I have to go and record something. Now, luckily, I happen to live in a place where right literally through the hall or through the wall, there are people that sleep there. And so, and we were getting back at like 10:30 last night. So, the last time I tried to record anything and the last time I was very intense and very emotional about something, it was a little too loud and the person banged on the wall. And so I was like, that's not a good idea. It's not very good for me to be nice to them. And so, so now I'm doing it now. And it gave me time to kind of go through and actually kind of process some of the feelings and some of the emotions that I was going through in relationship to this. And you're like, Nick, why in the world are you having feelings? Nick, men don't have feelings. Nick, you're dumb for having any kind of emotions related to a movie. It is a movie. To an extent, yes, you're correct. It is a little ridiculous that I have these kind of emotions and stuff like that. That being said, I have to express to you that I am in multiple videos over this, you'll see this. I'm a huge movie fan. I love movies. I love watching them. I'm a huge TV show fan. I love watching TV shows. Now, I'm more of a movie fan than I am a TV show fan because I like movies because they kind of like get the story done quickly and I don't have to commit to them. But I will do reviews. I will do reviews of TV shows here. However, with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and just ignore my little flapping extra wings and stuff like that. I'm not working out. I don't work out. I need to start working out. I just got a little extra birds flying around. But anyway, with this particular movie, so let me start off by saying, when it comes to animation, this movie is mind-bogglingly good. Phenomenal. Fantastic. I loved every bit of the animation. I had no qualms about the animation. Actually, I was blown away with how great the animation was. Just the different universes, the different ways that they kind of incorporated multiple universes into one scene or into multiple scenes, being able to blend different things. I absolutely loved every minute of that. As far as the voiceover work, fantastic. I loved hearing the voices. The voices seemed to fit into the characters, every single one of them. And there were just moments and periods where I was like, man, this is like this voice fits perfectly with this particular character. And I loved kind of seeing that. And because there wasn't a character that came out of this where I was like, man, that person's voice doesn't quite match. I didn't have anything along those lines. Another aspect that I absolutely loved were all the jokes. This movie was hilarious. There were moments, there were periods, there were just either the action was funny, so a little bit of slapstick, calls from the culture, whether it was a meme, for instance, the Spider-Man meme, fantastic. Loved every minute of seeing that. Blending different universes together. I loved all of those things. Okay, all those things were fantastic. Everything about those, the jokes were enjoyable. The family dynamics, great. Here's where I've got the biggest issue. Here's where I've got the biggest problem. It is not a complete story. When you have a story, you have at the beginning of every story generally some exposition. Who are the characters? What are they doing? What's their life like? Is it good? Is it bad? Who knows? Let's check it out. That's what you start with. Then you have something that happens, some kind of problem that gets initiated, some kind of trigger, something happens in their life. All of a sudden, an introduction of a bad guy. All of a sudden, the death of somebody, or just whatever it happens to be introduced. Then you have what is known as rising action. This is where now our hero, our protagonist, our person is growing and is learning new things and figuring out ways to possibly defeat whatever problem it is, whether it's a person, the world, the universe, whatever it happens to be. You get to a point of climax, which, now, there can be multiple points of climax where it's like climbing like a mountain range multiple times, going up and down and up and down, where you get to a climax and our protagonist fails, learning a little bit more, protagonist fails, learning a little bit more, protagonist fails, whatever it happens to be. But then you get to the ultimate climax. And what a story needs is that ultimate climax of whatever happens. Either the hero, the protagonist wins, and then we have a resolution of like what happens after that. Generally a fairly quick resolution, especially in movies. Or the climax happens and the hero loses. And we still have a resolution. We still have what happens after that. What are the effects of them not successfully defeating whatever the problem is? Okay, whatever the challenge is that gets introduced into their lives. The problem with Spider-Man across the universe, or across the Spider-Verse, is this simply in and of itself. There was a climax. There was everything going up to it. There was the exposition, a trigger, a problem, a rising action, a climax, and then the movie ends. And that is the problem. There is no resolution. There is no like, let's shorten this. Let's make this kind of like something happens to where we can get thrown back into the third movie, because there's a third one coming out. We get thrown back into the third movie, and we have at least a little bit of resolution, at least some kind of solving of a problem, or some, maybe not solving the problem, maybe something worse. There isn't that. It continues into a climax, and then cuts off and to be continued. This is the problem that I've got with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And here's the thing. You may sit there and say, well, Nick, I watched it. And at the beginning, they needed to kind of like really introduce the character, really go through the family dynamics. I've heard multiple reviewers sit there and say, the family dynamics were great right there at the beginning. It was gorgeous. It was funny. And they're right. It was gorgeous. It was funny. And they're also right. It is nice to have the family dynamics. However, I will sit there and I will say this. The pacing at the beginning of the movie was horrible. The worst I have seen. Because generally, for the most part, I'll use two examples. Number one, my wife, whenever we go out to a movie, most of the time she'll go to sleep. But every once in a while she'll stay awake. There were certain movies that kept her awake. Now, I will tell you, one of those particular movies, actually most of those movies are animated movies. And so taking her to an animated movie, such as Spider-Man, you would think that she would stay awake. You would think that she would be more engaged. But she passed out probably about 10 minutes into the movie. Now, that being said, that doesn't necessarily mean anything per se, because she is known to go to sleep. But my barometer is also, did I start to go to sleep? Did I start to lose focus? Did I start to lose interest? And I did. I absolutely did, because it started being a bit longer and longer and longer. And it was just like, what is happening here? Like, why is there so much exposition? Why is there so much background? Why can't we? And I didn't think about it. I didn't realize that was the thing. Because here's the thing. If it didn't climax at the end and then just cut off to be continued, I wouldn't be complaining about the first part. Because literally, about in the middle of the movie, or whenever Miles goes off to the home of Miguel, who's like another one of the main characters. As soon as he goes off to like the Spider-Man multiverse headquarters, okay? As soon as he goes off to that, things really start picking up. Things really start being interesting and really engaging. Now, I'm not saying that the family story or the history of the different Spider-Men, like Gwen as well as Miles, I'm not saying that those aren't interesting and that those weren't engaging. I'm just saying they were a little bit too long. And here's the thing. You know that you have a bad story when people start to fall asleep in your exposition. Your exposition should be shorter, concise, and the rising action and the climax should be the majority of the movie, should be the stuff that keeps you around. And for me, I didn't feel that the exposition, I felt like the exposition went too long. I feel like it was a waste of time. They could have cut out seconds, minutes out of some of those things in order to give us some kind of resolution. I'm not going to tell you exactly how it gets to a climax at the end, but it leaves you hanging off of a cliffhanger. And this is the number one problem with Hollywood. It's always trying to figure out how can we make another movie. Now, I know that they were planning. Apparently going into this, a few of the reviewers were like, you know what? They're planning on making the third one. They knew that going into it. And again, that's fine. That's not a problem. I don't necessarily have an issue with that. But as somebody who didn't know, went into the movie to sit there and be like, oh, okay, like this is the second one. Great. Let's see what they do. Again, beautiful, fantastic, gorgeous visuals. But then when you get to the point where everything's building and we're starting to get more like action and we're starting to get more like not aggression, I don't want to say aggression, but like more excitement about what's about to happen. The problem is then they cut it off. And yes, that leads into going into the third one. But again, I need to tell you, this is the problem with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, I'm going to be one of those that's very unique, and I'm probably going to be one of the only ones who doesn't really like it. I know that there have been a few others, but most of the major reviewers are like, this is such a great movie. It's amazing. And I'm like, but it's not. The problem is the story isn't enough. There isn't enough story. There isn't a complete story. You have to give the audience a complete story. And I'll give you a perfect example. We knew going into Avengers Infinity War, we knew that there was going to be another movie, a final movie. We knew that. But Avengers Infinity War actually contained in and of itself a story, okay? Where there was climax and then there was resolution. Now, granted, our heroes lost everything, lost what they were trying to do. That is climax. And then the resolution is what came after. That in and of itself is a story. But we knew going into that we would have another movie. We would have another chance. Our heroes would have a second chance at potentially doing something. We didn't know exactly what, but doing something. The problem with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is that there was no resolution. It was like build up, end, done. Oh, it's so infuriating. Oh, it's so frustrating to sit there and have to deal with that and to know that the only reason why is that they want you to watch the third one. Make a good enough movie and people will come to the third one. But you ruin a story. You don't create a story, and it's just, now we're just cheap audience members. Now we're just money to them, and we're not actually smart enough, seemingly, at least this is how it feels to me, is we're not smart enough to sit there, and based on the reviews that I'm seeing, is like, we aren't smart enough to sit there and look at it and be like, wait, that's not a complete story. I don't have a story here. There's no story. Like, you get to a climax and that's it. There's no resolution. Like, what's going on? Like, actually, we didn't even get to the full climax. It was a minor climax, and it wasn't even like a full climax. There wasn't a full climax there. There was no full climax. There was no full resolution. It's like, what is happening? Why on earth are we watching this? And the thing is until we actually do something about it, Hollywood will continue making crap that like this. And this is really concerning to me, is because this is the first movie that I've walked into or walked out of, and I've been like, I feel disappointment. I feel unsatisfied. I feel like I'm left to just pick this apart now. And the other thing too, like other reviewers have sit there and said, well, there was really, like, going in for 2 hours and 20 minutes, like, I was a little concerned that it would lag or that it wouldn't be worth that full time. And it wasn't. But these reviewers are like, it was. Another one reviewer, Chris Stuckman, he was like, oh, there's so many jokes being thrown at you, so many different things being thrown at you that, like, you've got to go back and rewatch it. I'm like, what could have been done is stretch those jokes out. Like, instead of having a really long exposition, shorten up the exposition, make sure that each joke lands. That way we're laughing at it and stuff. And the thing is like, if there's so many jokes that I have to go back and watch it again, then that's too many jokes. And apparently your jokes are garbage enough to not let that or to have that happen. You need to have good jokes to where you're not throwing 17 jokes while I'm still laughing at one. Okay? There's that whole issue, that whole challenge of like, yes, it was funny, and it was, and there were funny moments. But like the fact that all of it was being thrown out, like you can stretch that out a little bit more or a lot more, and then be able to get to an actual what is going to happen to Miles. What is going to happen with the villain, the Spot? What is going to happen with the multiverse, that like some of the issues that pop up in the storyline and stuff. What's going to happen? Like resolve at least one of those things. But instead they were adding new climaxual things, like certain climaxes, certain things happening. They just kept adding to it and adding to it. And it's like, guys, seriously, please do something. Please. It was such a beautiful thing. And I think the reason why I'm so upset is because it was such a great movie. Visually, it was such a really good, really decent storyline and something that is interesting, but then it ended way too soon. And the reason it ended too soon is because A, you had too much at the beginning, and B, you're trying to keep everybody to come to the third one. I have half a mind not to go to the third one, just in spite, just for the principle of it. Because it's like, now I'm turning into, and you, if you've watched this, you're turning into just basically a dummy who doesn't know what a story is. And you're like, well, that was, those were good visuals and they made me laugh. And it was, there was some interesting story, but, I'll go see the third one. That's the problem. The problem is that according to Hollywood, according to the people who make these movies, we are nothing more than just dummies who don't actually respect the story anymore. And that's an issue. That's a problem that I've got. And it just breaks my heart that this is what it's turning into. So I have to rank this, or I have to rate it. And I would sit there and I would have to rate it. Oh man. Cause like, again, the issue is just, it was so great. And then it just left off so much that I'm just like, I have to review it as in like, I probably wouldn't go to the theater and watch it. Like that's like, I would wait until it comes out on DVD or streaming or whatever they're coming out on. But that's the thing, is like, I really wouldn't go and watch this because of the fact, like, again, this is the rating that I've got, is because like of how much it leaves off at the end, that it's a climax that they want you to come back for, but I'm like, that you didn't give me anything. That like I gave you my money, I gave you my time, you're supposed to give me a story, and you didn't even do that. So, will I go see it? I probably will. Would I suggest you go into the theater? No, I wouldn't suggest going into the theater. Like, it's just, I mean, again, let me reiterate this. Go to the theater and watch it. It is an enjoyable experience, but because of the fact that there's not a full story, I have to rate it as not going to the theater. It is theater worthy. It is a great, like, if you take the second movie, this Across the Spider-Verse, and I'm sure Beyond the Spider-Verse, which is the third one, if you put them back to back, it would be something that I would absolutely go and see in the movie theater time and time and time again. But the problem is you cut it off right at halftime. Like right at halftime. It's so frustrating. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Subscribe if you're not. Leave me a like and share it with your friends and see if you disagree. I would love to hear you disagree or agree, whichever. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.